Lies of P is a Souls-like game, filled to the brim with boss fights. And in this video, I will be ranking every single boss fight from weakest to hardest. This ranking will be heavily influenced by my first encounter with each boss. Some of the mini bosses you'll find a couple times throughout the game, so I won't be including multiple encounters. But I will include everything that has a large health bar at the bottom of the screen. There are a couple outliers in this list, and I'll explain later on exactly why I put them in that spot, and why I consider them to be an outlier. Game and story spoilers ahead. Let's get started with number 25, the Atoned. The Atoned is an optional stalker battle that you can encounter on your way up to the cathedral. In order to fight this battle, you have to answer the dialogue correctly, or you can revisit the area afterwards. I didn't realize that I missed this until my third playthrough, so by the time I actually battled this character, I was very well versed in the combat of this game, and it was a very easy battle for me to take down. I also don't have any gameplay of this fight because I didn't realize I'd missed it, and on my third playthrough I wasn't recording at that point. Let's move on to number 24, Robber Weasel. By this point in the game, these stalker battles become fairly trivial. I was using a very big weapon for that big bonk, and I discovered a little after this fight I could accomplish even better with a little altercation to my weapon handle. Mr. Weasel, using his fire axe, failed to send me back to the Stargazer even once. His weapon is easily breakable, and his attacks are well telegraphed, resulting in an easy fight, even with a sluggish weapon. Number 23, the Puppet of the Future. The first time you find this puppet, it's in a giant area of corruption. As you stand on the corruption, your status bar will fill, and once full, will deal damage over time that slowly ticks away your health bar. To avoid the corruption, you can either hit a switch later on in the level, or you can run back and forth between small sections that are not covered by corruption. This boss has slow lumbering attacks, which are easy to dodge and easily telegraphed, making this an easy fight. However, I'm stubborn and decided to fight this boss on top of the corruption field, as well as not leveling up my weapon ahead of time. So this boss fight took a lot longer than it should have. Number 22, the Mad Donkey. The Mad Donkey is not a difficult fight. He's the earliest stalker battle that you have in the game. His attacks are hard to time because they come out so slow. Number 21, the Black Cat. Throughout the game, you're helping this guy trying to cure his blindness. You give him some gold coins and you help him along his way. And then at the end of the game, he decides to trash your hotel, take your dad. So by the time I found him, I was ready to just take him out. He fights you with the spear, which is pretty easy to block, and his weapon is easily breakable. This is an optional stalker battle, so you don't have to fight him. You can either beat him or give him more gold coins, and either way you'll get the rewards of the fight. Throughout my playthrough in Lies of P, I was looking for good hats, and this guy had one of the better ones, so I was really happy to take it from him. Let's move on to number 20, his sister, the Red Fox. After taking down Black Cat, I knew that I would also eventually fight his sister. Her attacks were harder to read, and she displayed more combo attacks, and a variety in timings of those attacks. So I'd say she's more difficult, but her health pool's pretty low, so every one of my attacks would do massive damage. Her fury attacks are long and sweeping, and I couldn't find out the timing of them. Fortunately, you can run away from it, and just avoid all the damage entirely. Compared to when you're fighting the Black Cat, the arena is tighter, but not too restricting, so it gives you a lot of area to play around with. This fight is only avoidable if you spare her brother. You get the same rewards whether you fight this stalker or avoid it entirely. And coming in at number 19, we have the Owl Doctor. Honestly, between the Red Fox and the Owl Doctor, I could have interchanged either of these two entries. The reason the Owl Doctor is getting a slightly higher difficulty is due to the arena that you're fighting him in. You're in a tight little box with a giant pillar in the middle. If you're using a weapon with a more horizontal attack, this arena could prove more difficult for you. The walls in this game tend to parry your attacks better than any enemy you'll find. But between the arena and his flurry of attacks, I found this guy just slightly more difficult than the Red Fox. Moving on with the countdown, number 18. In Lies of P, the first non-optional story boss of the game is the Parade Master. This guy resembles a ringleader, and he'll use his claws to attack you in the first phase of his battle. He has a clear first and second phase of this fight. He'll hit phase 2 about 50% of his health when he yanks on his top hat and pulls his head out. He will then use it as a club, and you'll gain a new moveset which he combos together and sometimes uses that fury attack when he glows red. As far as first bosses go, this is a very good boss to teach you the mechanics of the game and attack windows, when to attack and when to block. Overall, pretty easy fight, especially if you're used to Souls-like games. The next entry on this list, number 17, the Scrap Watchman. This fight is the first boss battle that it allows you to summon a specter. I didn't realize the specter was going to be like a summon that would help you fight the boss. I thought it was going to add to the story of the game and give you like more dialogue or more achievements if you used them. It just makes the boss fight easier. The Scrap Watchman can definitely be a higher entry on this list. However, since I'm going primarily off of first encounters, he's going to be lower than he probably should be. Number 16, the Survivor. This little rat you'll find in a small room with a big table in the middle. This guy likes to attack, and he doesn't really give you a lot of time to breathe. By this point in the game, I'm still getting used to the timings of the perfect guards, and the weapon I chose to use was slow, so weaving my attacks in between his might have added to the difficulty of this fight. And as a trophy for beating this guy, I wore his hat for the rest of the game. He did have one of the better hats in the game. His weapon is breakable. If you're good at perfect guarding, you'll be able to do it. I just couldn't figure out the timings of his attacks. I also hadn't leveled up my weapon at this point in the game, so I probably just wasn't dealing as much damage as I should have at this point. Number 15, the White Lady. The White Lady, kind of similar to the Survivor. She's a very agile fighter, which makes her a little difficult. She'll deal a lot of quick flurry attacks that you can either block with perfect guards to break her weapon or simply sidestep. This is one of the fights that you realize that strafing to the side is actually super effective against these enemies because they don't track their attacks very well. I had a hard time reading her attacks because they came out so quick. I was using a long, slow weapon, so for me to get my attacks in between her short, bursty ones was pretty difficult. At this point, I started leveling up my weapons, so I was able to deal some good damage when I did hit her. I'd say she was only really difficult because of her quickness, but as soon as you learn to just strafe to the side, the battle became pretty trivial. It also makes it a lot easier that the battle arena for this fight is a giant open courtyard, so there's not a lot of obstacles you can run into. Next up, number 14, we've got the big burly brawler, Champion Victor. This guy is a brick house or a farming juggernaut. He hits like a truck, but other than that, I don't think he was a very difficult boss. This guy will attack with a combo of punches and kicks, but are otherwise easy to dodge. Not a lot of blocking was needed in this fight. You can't actually break anything on this puppet, so dodging was the best option for me. This boss has two phases. Once you hit about 50% health, he starts chugging some ergo, and then he becomes an even bigger monster. He swings a little bit harder, he has more combo attacks, but he's really not that much different. Dodging left, dodging right, dodging back, all work pretty well. As long as you can dodge, eventually you just kind of take him down. I did enjoy this boss fight. It's kind of like taking down Goliath. Number 13, the Black Rabbit Brotherhood Round 2. I don't know about you, but I found that fighting the second round of these hoodlums was easier than the first round. In the second round, you fight all three of the younger members of the Brotherhood at the same time. Each one has its own health pool, and so as you take out each one individually, the fight becomes less and less one-sided. Once you get close to taking out the third member, the Eldest will pop out of the coffin and attack you with his Buster Sword. However, this time he's equipped with some ergo, because they've like pumped him full of it or something to bring him back to life. So he has new energy attacks that have some range. Another addition to this fight is each of the younger three members is equipped with a new status. So the best strategy for me was to take out the youngest because I hate dealing with decay, which is one of the most annoying effects in the game. On the first try, I failed to take out the youngest first, so I was left to battle her and the Eldest at the same time. So on my second attempt, I made sure to take her out first. That way I didn't have to deal with the decay that she spreads. And this made the fight a lot easier. Once you stagger the Eldest, he starts flailing around wildly. And before you can unleash your fatal attack, he does a couple of quick swipes and then a giant energy wave, so you have to block or dodge all of those before you can get to him for your fatal attack. A couple of the bosses later in this list also do the same thing before their fatal attack, but this is the first one that I remember and getting hit by it. The other thing about this fight is I really wish they would have dropped their headgear. I really like the Black Rabbit's hats. I wish I could have worn one. Halfway through the countdown, we're with number 12, the Walker of Illusions. This was a very eerie boss fight because of the chaotic screeching and the music playing in the background, making this boss unpredictable. This boss was wielding like a butcher's knife and then like a stiletto dagger, which between the two attacks became very sporadic, so it was hard for me to get a perfect block. You can break both of the weapons to make this boss fight easier if you're good at perfect guarding. About 50% down the health bar, it will spawn a clone. The clone deals just as much damage, but has less health, so it's easier to take out the clone and get back to the boss afterwards. The other move that I had to watch out for, it would launch a disruption attack, which if you take too much disruption, you will just die. There's no coming back from it. It's one of the more scarier statuses to fight against, because there's nothing worse than losing your health bar due to just filling up a status bar. Number 11, the Mad Clown Puppet. The Mad Clown Puppet you'll find on the hill leading up to the Opera House. There's 3 main attacks that you're going to want to watch for on this guy. One's like a Blitzcrank Cook, where he throws out his hand. You can either perfect guard, or you can just sidestep it. The second attack is like a Beyblade. He spins around, hits you about 6 or 7 times, the last hit being a little more delayed. Perfect guarding every single one of these strikes will help break his stance and get you that fatal attack that's so very needed in this fight. The third attack, he'll lunge at you with his belly. It comes out pretty quick, so the timing on it's a little weird. But the hardest part about this boss is not the fight itself, it's the run up to the boss. Most of the bosses that you fight in this game, you have a stargazer right next to the enemy, so you can just walk right back to him and try again once you failed. This guy you've got to walk through a majority of the level, and all of the enemies on the way have flamethrowers, so the overheat damage that they'll do to you will stack up. So you've probably already lost health, and you've probably also used some pulse cells, so you're never fully equipped for this fight by the time you get to him. And I thought that was the toughest part about this boss. We are finally getting into the top 10 of this countdown, and taking the number 10 spot is going to be the Door Guardian. This massive enemy guards the door leading up to the Alchemist hideout in the final level of the game. The main way to beat this guy is going to be through perfect guards. Just stagger the enemy and then use fatal attacks to take out the majority of his health bar, due to normal attacks not doing any damage. I would count this boss as a gimmick boss. You can't just brute force your way through and hack it down. It forces you to use perfect guards to break its stance. If you weave in attacks between your perfect guard, it will also help to stagger the boss. The best way that I've found to time its attacks is with its feet. Usually, most of its overhand attacks would coincide with a stomp. So when its foot lands on the ground, I would block, knowing that the attack from above was going to land. I actually used that strategy in a couple other fights. I feel like fighting the Door Guardian actually made me a better player, because it forced me to work on the timings of my perfect guards, which actually came in handy for later battles in the game. Taking up the number 9th spot, we got the Corrupted Parade Master. This guy is a modified version of the Parade Master that we've already fought earlier in the game. His attacks are fairly similar. He has the long wind-ups, and you can easily tell which arm he's trying to attack with. There is one move that he'll use to switch up the timings of his attacks, and you'll just watch for when he rotates his body 360 degrees and hits you with his outside arm. This boss also inflicts the decay status, so by perfect guarding his attacks, you will avoid the decay buildup. You'll definitely want to watch out for his grab attack. He will reach out with his corrupted arm and then extend his neck to gnaw on you for huge damage. This attack put me on 1 HP several times in our fight, so I got lucky that I didn't lose to this guy a few more times. This boss will spawn corrupted minions. These corrupted monsters hit hard, but are very slow and they lack HP, so taking them out earlier made the boss fight easier for me. The one attack that I loved to see this boss use was the dive attack, where he jumps at you and then starts swimming. Every motion of this swimming action on the ground you can perfect guard, which will do massive poise damage, so you can build up your stagger meter faster. For the number 8th slot, we have the Fallen Archbishop Andreas. Andreas was corrupted by his own greed, and he becomes this nasty creature that's just really disgusting. This is easily one of the most vile bosses that you'll have to fight in Lies of P. For the first health bar in this fight, you're fighting a giant pillbug, spider, termite, whatever looking monster. He's got a couple different claw attacks, a stomp, where he kind of sits on you, and a couple different tongue swipes, which will inflict the decay status on you. Once you take out the full health bar, he will split into 2. Where the Archbishop will actually pull itself out of the monstrosity, becoming even more disgusting. One side will be the termite, while the other end will be like a centipede. You can fight either side of this boss, but I found fighting the pillbug side of this guy was a lot easier. So sometimes I would get caught on the other side where I was fighting the centipede, and in that case I would just strafe around to the side and then try and fight the termite. Because I was already familiar with its attacks, I didn't want to learn the centipede's attack too. Except for one crazy energy blast, where he shoots a laser in front of him, and he also does an area of effect around him. So you'll want to dodge the laser first, and then dodge the area of effect that's around him. He's weak to fire damage, so if you're having troubles fighting him, make sure you take the fire grindstone, or you can throw the fire consumables. Coming in at number 7, we got the Eldest of the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. The Eldest, swinging his giant slab of steel, hits pretty hard and has a lot of multi-strikes. One in particular, he'll spin around like Garen from League of Legends and hit you about 5 times, which you can perfect guard every single strike to help break his weapon and his stance. And at certain points in the fight, the siblings will also jump in and try and outnumber you. Generally, you can avoid the 2v1 by running far away from the Eldest, so if you lure him away and fight away from the big guy, you can keep the fight to a 1v1. Once the Oldest starts charging at you, you can usually just sidestep or dodge, and then continue your battle with the younger sibling. Each sibling has its own set of attacks, but every single sibling in the Brotherhood has a breakable weapon, so perfect guarding in this fight will prove very useful. This was the hardest stalker battle in all of Lies of P in my opinion, most likely due to the Oldest having a deceptively large attack range and a lot of combo attacks, plus it did a lot of damage. I was actually surprised that round 2 was easier than round 1 for the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. Maybe it's due to the weapon I chose for this fight, or learning the movesets of each sibling. Of all the weapons in the game, I really wish this guy dropped his weapon on defeat, because I probably would have used this weapon for the rest of the game. For number 6 in the countdown, just outside our top 5, is the King's Flame Fuoco. In my first playthrough in Lies of P, this is my first major obstacle. Fuoco is really good at using slow, delayed attacks, and it took me a few tries to figure it out, but you can time his stomps with his overhand attacks. So when he stomps his little foot down, you can actually block at the same time to perfect guard his attacks. And at about 50% health, he starts taking this game to a ranged match. He starts shooting mud balls at you, which he can ignite on fire. He starts pouring fire into his little bucket belly, and he just shoots a bunch of fire throughout the battlefield. But I think the difficulty of this boss was self-inflicted. I was using a weapon that didn't scale with my motivity stats. Instead, I was using a technique weapon that was not powered up. So those two things made this boss artificially tanky. Had I powered up my weapon, or had I used a weapon that was more scaled for my build, I could have done more damage to this boss and beat it quicker. So a lot of the damage that I dealt to this boss just ended up getting regened as health, because I was not aggressive enough to keep him down. This fight took a lot longer than it should have. At number 5 in this countdown, I'm putting Simon Manus. He has 2 forms, the Arm of God and the Awakened God. Both forms are extremely tanky even with a maxed out weapon, which is partially the reason I think this boss is tough. In both phases, he uses a long sweeping attack with his giant mace that you can break, but I never managed to. So once you learn the timings of his attacks, you're able to perfect guard, break his stance, and deal a lot of damage with the fatal attacks. In his second phase, a spirit humanoid thing will pop out of his back and you'll start summoning energy blasts, distortion rays, and summon hands from the sky, basically bombarding you with different attacks. This phase is tough because you have a lot more to dodge. In half the battle, seems like you're just running away from his ranged attacks while he just slowly regens all his health back. So if you're aggressive, you can keep down his health and not let him regen fast enough, and being able to perfect guard his attacks will help with that. But otherwise, I think that you just have to manage a lot in this fight, and I believe that's the toughest part of it. And coming in at number 4, we have the King of Puppets. The King of Puppets has 2 very distinct phases. In the first phase, he's a giant mechanical puppet that'll attack you with claws and accordion-like tentacles. For the most part, his attacks are pretty well telegraphed, and I found that blocking the claw attacks and dodging the tentacle attacks was the most effective way to get through the first phase. He's got a lot of health, and breaking his form is the easiest way to knock down a lot of health. And depleting the first health bar will reveal the true boss piloting this puppet mech, Romeo. This phase 2 is hyper aggressive, and Romeo will use a variety of combo attacks, which are hard to weave your attacks in between sometimes. But this phase has a major flaw. For whatever reason, Romeo has trouble tracking his target when you move to the left. So most of his attacks will either just swing right by you or you'll dodge them, and he won't be able to hit you with combo attacks. It's something you can use in a couple other boss fights later on, but Romeo is extremely weak to moving left. And once you can exploit that flaw, it'll simplify the boss fight, which is the reason he's not higher in this list. I feel that the last couple boss fights in this countdown do not have such a fatal flaw, but overall, Romeo was a very tough boss for me to beat the first time. Occupying the number 3 spot in this countdown is the Nameless Puppet, the optional final boss in the game. Depending on how you answer the final question from Geppetto, you might fight this boss or you might skip it entirely. In the first phase of this boss fight, Geppetto controls the Nameless Puppet, and it uses a long sword to attack you. There's multiple combo attacks, and I found the way to best time for perfect guard was to look at the hilt of the weapon. I also liked using the puppet string to close the distance when he got a little too far away. Once you take out the first full health bar, the puppet will sever its ties from Geppetto, get a new sword, and have a whole new set of attacks. A couple attacks to look out for are the red energy wave that he'll use, it's kind of like Rivers of Blood from Elden Ring. He'll also have a high speed dash that charges right in front of him that you can either perfectly guard, which is a little difficult on the timing, or you can sidestep to get out of the way before it knocks you down. Ultimately, beating the Nameless Puppet felt satisfying, and then you get to watch all the beautiful cutscenes right afterwards, so it really did live up to being the final boss in the game. At number 2, we've got the Green Monster of the Swamp. This boss was deceptively difficult for a couple reasons. There were numerous attacks that I could not figure out the timings, nor the best ways to dodge or block these attacks. In phase 1, you'll fight the Green Monster, who kind of looks like a Heartless from Kingdom Hearts. He has a burrowing attack where he'll dig under the ground and kind of pop up right underneath you, and I had a hard time dodging this attack. Several times I would dodge forward or to the side and I would evade the attack, but on other occasions, performing the same actions, I would still get hit by the attack. So I'm not sure what the best way to avoid this attack is, nor did I figure it out in all my playthroughs. Another attack he'll use is his Fury attack where he charges at you. Several times I could block this in a perfect guard and avoid all damage entirely, and then seemingly when I would try to block it again, he would just trample me. So I don't know if the timing was off or if it was a little spotty on the time frame on which I should block. He has a 4-hit combo that you can perfectly guard consistently or just sidestep to the right, which I found was a better option if he ever chose to use attacks. I could get a little moment to breathe by blocking the attacks, strafing right, and then hitting him once he finished his last swipe. And then once you take down the first phase, it'll fuse with a puppet that resembles the Scrap Watchman from an earlier fight. He becomes the Puppet Devouring Green Monster. His moveset will change. He has a triple dash, in which he will charge at you 3 times, on the third glowing red for a Fury attack. I found that in my second playthrough fighting this guy, that you can actually dodge forward to dodge this dash. Prior to that, I was running left or right, which seemed to work, but it was a little inconsistent. He does a lot of damage with his claw strikes, and several times I would get hit at about 50 or 75% health just to have it take my entire health bar. This boss did a lot of damage, and it has a lot of health. It would also infect you with decay, slowly whittling down your weapon durability and your health bar. Phase 1 is weak to fire, and phase 2 is weak to electric damage. So depending on what stage of the fight you're having difficulties with, you can take a different grindstone to help you with that fight. Every time that I've fought this boss, he's been extremely difficult for me to overcome. So I don't know if this boss was tough, or if it was just tough for me. But I feel that this boss will get number 2 on the list because he consistently proved how difficult he was for me to overcome, even as I got used to the game's mechanics. And we've finally reached number 1 on the countdown, and as you might have expected, Luxasia the Complete is taking the number 1 spot in this countdown for the toughest boss in Lies of P. In her first phase, she's fully clad in armor, and she's got a couple of terrifying electricity attacks that if you're not careful will do quite a bit of damage. Many of her attacks will hit in multiple combos, so you can perfect guard each one to help stagger the enemy. Several of her combo attacks you can also move side to side because the tracking on these attacks will usually miss you. So if you're not confident with your perfect guards, you can also strafe to the side on most of these attacks. She's one of the bosses that once you actually stagger her, she will unleash a few attacks before she calms down and lets you get your fatal attack. So you have to be careful not to get hit by those attacks and just kind of wait out that time period while she's flailing. Once you take out the first full health bar, she will shed her armor and spark up her sword, so she'll start doing electricity damage. At the beginning of phase 2, she will always jump up and start shooting electric blasts at you, which you can perfectly guard to reflect them back at her. This will do damage, and then once she's fired off several electric blasts, she'll charge. You can perfect guard this, but the timing on it's pretty crazy. You have to do it as soon as she makes any movement, and then immediately block, because she comes in very fast, so it's hard to time it. Most of phase 2, she's actually just dashing around and blitzing back and forth, so keeping track of her attacks is fairly difficult in this phase. The one thing that kind of sticks out to me was every time that you stagger her, she will swing twice and then pause and let out a giant electrical shock around her. Then you can go in for your final attack. But this is a good time to either grind up your weapon or infuse your weapon with a grindstone before going in for the fatal attack. Of all the boss fights in Lies of P, this was by far my favorite battle. She was difficult, but fair. It seemed like the perfect climax for scaling the tower and reaching the top. Of course, in the end, you find out you still have to fight Simon and the Nameless Puppet, but she would have been a well-deserved final boss as well. Which boss did you think was the hardest to beat? If you made it to this point in the video, guys, thanks for watching. Give the video a like and subscribe for more gaming content, and I'll see you on the next video.